Now for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in Arise analyst Constance Ikwoku. Good morning, Constance.
Good morning, Yolanda. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning, Constance.
How was the weekend?
My weekend was fantastic.
Okay, that's good. Fantastic is a good word. Mine was very restful. I slept a lot.
Oh, glad to hear that.
Yeah, I did. Okay, to look at the headlines with us, we'll have a guest shortly. He will be joining us, but we'll go on with, discussing among ourselves. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day newspaper. Wike raises FCT's revenue by over 177% from 9 billion to 25 billion in 19 months. This revenue comes from collection of ground rent and payment of certificates of occupancy, CFO, by those allotted lands. Minister Nyesom Wike said that before he became minister, there were CFOs that had not been signed 10 to 13 years. In 13 years, only 7,000 to 8,000 CFOs were completed, but in less than 2 years, he became minister. He has signed 7,000. He also talked about the aggressive infrastructure drive, of which he said that without these funds, it will be impossible to complete infrastructure projects. I mean, Minister Wike, we know his nickname in the FCT today is Mr. Projects because of what he's been doing, completing roads and opening new roads as well. But, he's certainly making a name for himself, although a lot of people frown at his brand of politics, in his home state of Rivers State. Charles, your thoughts on this?
Well, whatever his brand of politics in Rivers State is, this is about what he has been able to achieve in the Federal Capital Territory. See, on the surface, it would appear as if he is a bull in a china shop, but the results are there. I mean, at some point I was thinking, he has been stepping on so many toes, so why is he getting away with it? Well, it's very clear that the money is rolling in, even though his methods may seem, crude at times. So he did say that 7,000 CEOs signed in 13 years has been able to do that in 2 years. Yeah. And, his methods, revoking of some of these CEOs, regardless of whom the land belongs to. So the fear of Wike appears to be the beginning of wisdom for landowners in Abuja. And he did say that he needed the money for infrastructure development. So that's the best way to go about it. Get money from where it is supposed to come from so that he would plow it into those projects. So yeah, kudos to Wike.
Indeed, we're now joined by Dr. Iyebosa Owugiaren. He is the editor, Nation's Capital of This Day newspaper. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Owugiaren.
Good morning.
So before you joined us, we were talking about Minister Nyesom Wike. And, what he's doing also speaks to the freeing up of the bottleneck that is involved or that exists in the FCT. Or in government in general, there are so many things. You have your land, you cannot get your CFO. There are processes that you have to go through, money under the table and all of that. But he's trying to make it easy for people to access these services.
Absolutely. Like him or hate him, Wike appeared to be changing the narrative in the Federal Capital Territory. We had a minister in this Federal Capital Territory in the past who was virtually sleeping in the office. And since Wike came, he has changed that narrative. He believes that there's enough money in the Federal Capital Territory. All you needed to do is to collect this money and use it to execute projects that will better the life of the people living in the Federal Capital Territory. And that's exactly what he has been doing. In the past, where you have people who bought properties in the Federal Capital Territory who try to get their CFO to enable them do business with the bank and use the CFO to do other business. But they find it very difficult to get that. You finish pay for CFO for 3, 4, 5 years, you can't get the CFO. And that was the situation we find ourselves in the Federal Capital Territory. But Wike came and he's changing that sad narrative. For now, if you pay for your CFO in less than a few months, you get a CFO, and you can use the CFO to do other business. And Wike appeared to be doing so many things in the Federal Capital Territory. And when people see that you are doing so many things and you are asking them to pay taxes, they will pay. And that's exactly what is happening in the Federal Capital Territory. And one should encourage Wike to do more. And that is why those who have refused to pay ground rent are being sanctioned. And it's not living, whether you are a minister, you are a governor, or you are a former president. Once you fail to pay for your ground rent, Wike has a way of sanctioning them. So he's been doing that, and we are getting the benefit of what he's doing.
All right. The minister is obviously working. Let's look at Daily Sun. Niger tanker explosion aftermath, grief, tears as 80 fuel fire victims get mass burial. Tinubu orders campaign on danger of scooping fuel as death toll rises to 86. Another national tragedy. This occurred last Saturday in Niger State. Some residents were scooping fuel from a fallen tanker. As if that was not enough, they switched on a generator to ease the transfer of petrol, which now triggered an explosion. Now, this clearly shows they were unaware that fuel is highly inflammable using a generator beside a tanker. I mean, this happens often. This one, in 5 months, there have been 265 deaths from tanker explosions in this country. So you would think that there's some form of awareness of how dangerous this is, but it doesn't seem so.
Yes, honestly, I mean, in this case, ignorance is not bliss, and it seems that there must be some sort of public campaign by the Federal Road Safety Corps in order to inform people about the true dangers of scooping fuel. But it's also noted that in some cases, some people are there warning others about the dangers. I remember once a story we were reporting on, a man said that he was warning people about the dangers and they were still rushing towards the tanker, and when it exploded, he realized that one of his children was amongst those who were dead, who did not heed his warnings. And so we're seeing where desperation, sometimes maybe greed, sometimes poverty, is what will cause people to run towards something this dangerous. And I think it's a little bit of an indictment on the Federal Road Safety Corps for them to come out and say, oh, the tanker was not properly attached to the trailer. That is your job, to make sure that those type of vehicles are not on the road in the first place.
Come to think of it, that's what I was actually going to address. I mean, the frequency of tanker accidents, tankers, overturning on the roads and spilling their contents. I think it's something that actually needs to be looked into. The owners of these tankers, and of course the members of the FRSC, ensuring the safety levels of these articulated vehicles. I mean, just imagine the tankers not properly lashed onto the trailers and then falling over, or sometimes even acts of reckless driving on the part of the tanker drivers themselves. The tanker accidents are too frequent, and as long as tankers keep falling and spilling their contents on the roads, no matter how much you try to enlighten people about the dangers, desperation will always drive them to take the risks. So why don't we even try preventing the tankers from crashing on the roads for once?
Right.
And then we've also talked about alternative ways of, transporting. Exactly. It doesn't only have to be roads.
Yes.
Barges.
We have the pipelines there.
Yeah. Everything is on the road.
Them.
Yeah.
And the trains.
Let's also look
trains as well.
Sorry to interrupt. Well, in just a few hours, President-elect Donald Trump will officially take office, and Arise News is there live to share every moment of the inauguration with you. Let's cross over live right now to Washington, D.C. and speak with Arise international correspondent Adefemi Akinsanya.
Welcome to Daybreak, Adefemi. How's it going over in D.C.?
Adesuwagiwa Osage, good morning, good morning.
Good morning!
To you all. Hope you're all doing well. I don't know if you can imagine. I feel as though in Abuja it might be a little warmer in Abuja than it is right now in Washington.
It's a lot warmer.
It is.
-4, -5. It's just before 2 a.m. in the morning. So as you can imagine, it's a nippy night in Washington D.C. But even if it's too cold for the coming of the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump, it's not too cold for us. So we're on the streets, as you can see. We're stood in front of the Capitol, which will be the host area for the inauguration, happening happening in about 10 hours or so. Now, when we're looking ahead to this inauguration ceremony, we do know that President-elect Donald Trump has had quite a stacked calendar leading up to this moment. Just yesterday, he spoke at the Capital One Arena in downtown Washington, D.C., where he talked about the coming, of course, of this new presidency, but also issues that are happening at the same time, simultaneous ones, such as the ceasefire in the Middle East, historic, has been able to survive the last-minute stumbling blocks that we saw coming from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In addition to talking about the ceasefire, he was also talking about this TikTok ban and how, for the time being at least, it has resurfaced. I can confirm that TikTok is working in the United States. And then further on from that, he is also talking about his plans to visit LA, and that is in the aftermath of these wildfires. So he's making it very, very, very clear that these are his plans once he assumes office later on today. Now, in addition to that, we also know that the Capitol, which will be the host for the ceremony, will not actually take place with all the grand inspectors as you're expecting from outside on the stairs and all of that stuff. We do know, and we were told a few days ago, that President-elect Donald Trump's ceremony, his swearing in, will actually take place inside the Capitol Rotunda because of the cold weather. And as you can see, we are outside.
Yes, you are braver than
cold,
Trump. You're braver than Trump.
Manageable. So we are definitely, of course, looking forward to the coming of this administration. But please do. I wonder if, I'm hoping you can definitely hear us. I'm sure you can.
Yes, I can definitely hear you over here. I was saying that you're braver than Trump to brave that cold when he can't, Adifemi. But we know you will go anywhere to get the story. But I want to ask, what's the atmosphere like?
Absolutely.
Because it's very different.
Out on the streets.
Yeah. What's the atmosphere like today? Because this is very different from the last inauguration.
Thank you. So it's definitely. Go ahead, Yolanda.
Yes, I had the same. I echoed the same sentiments. What is the atmosphere like over there?
Well, it seems to have lost comms, but I know you were asking about what the anticipation is like on the streets. And, it's still very early in the morning. We're about 2 a.m. now. And so many people actually haven't had the opportunity, as it stands yet, to really come out and prepare. What we do have, what we can see, what we have seen is the markers coming up. So you've got all of these security fences. The last time we were in Washington, D.C. was during the election. And at that point, you didn't have these barriers up. But, of course, security is far heightened. Behind the camera there, you do have the presence of military, and you can expect that over the coming hours, more and more police presence will be here. In terms of speaking to people, people are still, it seems, wrapped up warm in their homes. Not many people are on the streets as yet, but you can imagine that there is going to be a lot of excitement associated with this inauguration, and high-profile guests when it comes to politicians, people who are definitely in support of Donald Trump, and then obviously politicians from the other side of the aisle. But you do have the likes of AOC, who spoke on her own social media platforms and said quite candidly that she would not be attending Trump's inauguration. But, when we're looking at all of these issues happening in the world, the ceasefire, but TikTok specifically, what is very interesting is that we do know that the CEO of TikTok will be attending this inauguration ceremony. And TikTok and certain reports have credited Donald Trump with this removal or temporary stay of this ban. But we also know that it was Trump who was very much staunchly in support of the TikTok ban because of TikTok's owner, ByteDance, and its proximity to the Chinese government. So a lot of changing of tunes here. Definitely Donald Trump is trying to position himself as the president to as many people as possible, and that would of course include younger members of the demographic, the Gen Z as you call them, people who are definitely using the social media platform and who would appreciate that despite going dark for a few hours on Sunday, here on Monday it is back up.
Now, about this TikTok thing, do you think that it will actually increase Trump's popularity, because of the sheer number of users of the app in the United States of America? It went down because of that court ruling, and then because of Trump's pronouncement, it is back up again. So do you think it will increase Trump's popularity ratings?
I think so. I think it already has. When we're looking at the app itself, there have been so many users who have, especially American users, who've come back online, who have thanked Donald Trump, who have thanked the administration for bringing TikTok back to them, which is quite interesting because, as I said, if it would be interesting to know if they were aware that this ban was one that Trump really brought into effect, one that Trump actually was in support of. And it's not clear at this moment how much power he will have as president to stop a law that is already put in motion. We do know that the Supreme Court on Friday upheld the ban, and with this executive order, the speaking of an executive order, which actually hasn't come yet because he's not president just yet, it is likely that for at least people who want to keep access to this app here in the United States, they definitely will be happy that Donald Trump is the president who has delivered this. But you know, when we look at his first presidency and the coming of this second one, it does come with its own line of controversy, because you have issues with performers, celebrities who are going to be attending his inauguration, performing at inaugural parties beforehand. We do know that you had Snoop Dogg who performed just yesterday and over the weekend, and the likes of Nelly too, the Village People also performing, and that garnering a lot of criticism because, one, a lot of people feel as though these musicians, for example, should be on the other side of this political argument. They shouldn't be supporting someone who has the legal issues that Donald Trump has been facing. They shouldn't be supporting someone who has had rhetoric that is against the LGBTQI community, which is why it was quite interesting to see the Village People come and perform alongside him. So I do think that in as much as with this TikTok ban, it has won him a lot of support and gratitude and credit, there is definitely going to be very many people who are raising eyebrows at the likes of celebrities who are endorsing tacitly this new administration by their support performing at his. If you just, I don't know if my friends over in Abuja, if you remember Chrisette Michelle, she's a US musician at Suwagiwa. I know you know exactly.
I know.
Who
She got
Chrisette Michelle
cancelled
is,
for
and she was
her
effectively
for
cancelled for performing at his inauguration.
And you know, Snoop Dogg came out against Kanye West also because of his support, and now Snoop Dogg is supporting Donald Trump. There's nothing your eye would not see when it comes to American politics, Adefemi. But thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak, Arise international correspondent Adefemi Akinsoya. And we're waiting for all the excitement for today. Thank you. Stay warm. Well, we're going back to our newspaper review with Dr. Constance Ikwoku, Arise analyst. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful report from Adefemi there in Washington, D.C. I remember in 2008 when I covered that election, President Obama, it was so cold. So I can understand when they moved it inside, you know, this year. Well, our time is fast spent, so we'll just look at the headlines for you so that at least you know what is top in the news. Let's look at Daily Trust. We'll go through the headlines quickly. $6 billion Mambila Power Project and deal, Obasanjo Buhari testify in Paris court. Then to Daily Independent, ex-petroleum minister Dezani denies ownership of repatriated $52.8 million. She says that the yacht that was sold belongs to Kola Aluko and not herself. New Telegraph, over 18 transmission towers vandalized in January, according to TCN. And then on to Vanguard newspaper, manufacturers cut back on bank loans. And then we also have another story there. MAGA, what awaits Nigeria as Trump mounts saddle. On to Leadership newspaper, Japa syndrome threatening Nigeria's workforce. And police kill 7 bandits, recover 109 rustled animals in Katsina State. We also have national economy, affordability concerns compound Nigeria's housing woes. Onto international headlines. Daily Graphic, Constitution Review Committee formed, experts to present recommendations in 5 months. They are also asking public officials in Ghana to declare their assets before taking office. Citizen newspaper, guns silent at last. Here's a massive photo of the aftermath of the war in Gaza, total destruction. The long-awaited ceasefire between Israel and Hamas kicked in yesterday night. I think this story took up a chunk of the South African newspapers because South Africa took Israel to the International Criminal Court, alleging genocide against Palestinians. The court did say that Israel's action could amount to genocide, but did not stop them from carrying on the military campaign. And then we have other front pages. This story dominates. The Sun newspaper, the Times, the Daily Mail is the same story all over. We also have the Guardian newspaper this morning. Hostages out as truce holds. Then Trump to be sworn in on the same spot as the Capitol riot. So, you know, that's all we have in the newspaper. It's on front pages today. So any of us can comment, you know, on Gaza, the crisis in Gaza, Trump being sworn in on, and how that could possibly affect African economies. Dr. Yobosa, we can start with you.
Well, it is good.
Minutes, actually.
It is good. After over a year, there has been a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. But these things could have been, executed many months back.
Yes.
Because look at the wastage. Look at the number of people that were killed. You know, look at the property and the life that were destroyed, both in Hamas and Israel. For me, I think it's very senseless. Like people say, after war, you still come back to the table to resolve the crisis. But I think it took them a long time, you know, to resolve this matter, because at the end of the day, many lives have been lost, many properties have been destroyed. Look at the picture by the graphic. It tells the stories. Now, those who are returning home now, where are they returning to? They are coming to face a serious humanitarian crisis. And for me, it was a very senseless war, even though there were justification from both parties. You know, it was senseless.
Yes, and I just think that when we talk about hostages, I also like to refer to the Palestinians that are being called prisoners. I also refer to them as hostages because you've had over a million people being held by Israel since the occupation of East Jerusalem. You have thousands of Palestinians who are held without charge or without trial, and they can be held for 6 months in the initial instance, and then that can be extended over and over again without them ever facing a charge or a trial. And so for me, that is a hostage situation as well. But so I think it's good that, you know, we have releases on both sides, but ultimately, as he said, what was the point of this war?
Well, unequal dynamics right there. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Dr. Yobosa Owogaren, for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you for joining us, Dr. Constance Ikoku. That's all the time we have for you here on Daybreak. I am Adesu Agiwa Osage.
I'm Charles Eruka. It's goodbye from me.
And I'm Yolanda Robert. Please do keep it here on Arise News. The morning show is next. Goodbye.